Alright, so in the last video, we used the distance tool to kind of outline what the hole is eventually going to look like, and use that tool to make sure that we're making a fair hole and that the golfer isn't being tricked into something that they're not supposed to. So this is actually probably a good time to stop and talk about the math of the golf club. This is not something I do for every hole. I don't necessarily think that it's mandatory, and it does involve quite a bit of math. So honestly, this is a video you can probably skip if you want to, but I do think it's pretty important to know. So what I'm basically talking about here is the way that wind and elevation affects how far the shot will go. So in this instance, we're talking about this 265 hole down there. As you can see, it says it's negative 0.4 feet, which is, nothing. But the hill that we're gonna end, or the hole that we're gonna end up making, this is gonna actually be in the air. I haven't decided exactly how high I want it to be yet, but for the sake of the video and for the sake of easy math, we're gonna say that this is actually gonna end up being 30 feet higher in the air than the landing point. I think I just passed it, but the landing point right here. So the basic rule of thumb for height is that for every 3 feet down or up, the ball will either travel a yard farther or a yard less. So in this case, with that being 30 feet up in the air and the landing point being 30 feet down, it's going to travel 10 yards farther, 30 divided by 310. So if it was opposite, where the fairway was 30 feet higher than where the tee box was down there, it would travel 10 less yards. So in this case, I've drawn this 265 line, but I'm actually looking at about 10 yards farther that it'll travel, or 10 yards less that it'll travel. That's not even taking into account wind, because for every when the wind is blowing with your golfer with the shot, let's say it's blowing 20 miles an hour with you, it's going to carry 75% of that distance. So if it's blowing 20 miles an hour, 75% is 15 more yards. So it'll actually reach out here. So even though this was my initial landing point right here in the middle, based on how the wind is blowing and how high the elevation is, the initial drive is actually going to potentially carry towards here, and then even with the roll, go towards the end of the fairway. So if you remember from previous videos, I made a point to leave room here where the fairway was going to end actually out here as opposed to right here at the drive, because you never know what conditions are going to play with on the course. So you want to make sure that you're leaving plenty of room. So the converse effect here, I was talking about how with elevation it can go 10 yards farther. If the wind is blowing actually back in your face, so if we're saying it's 20-mile wind going back, and this is actually huge, but it actually takes 150%. So with a 20-mile-an-hour wind in your face, it'll actually travel 30 yards less, which is right here at that point. If you are hitting uphill, 30 yards less ends up being about there. Which is why it's important that you want to make sure you're starting your fairway way back of where that could possibly be, because that's actually a pretty significant distance to carry back here depending on wind. This isn't even accounting for how far left or right or any golfer error that might be. You have a potential landing area based on the elevation and based on wind of it's 75 yards there based on the different conditions of the hole and of the course that day. I hope that all makes sense. Like I said, it's not necessarily something that you need to know, but something that I do feel is pretty helpful. So in the next video, we'll actually start to trace the fairway. We won't be laying our fairway down yet, but we will be laying the skeletal framework for it. So until the next video.